second parak, based on Aleph, the third line. So yesterday we learned that if normally when you eat truma belongs to a kohen, so if Yisrael Azar eats, he has to pay not only a keren, he also has to pay the chomesh, right? So if he eats chametz, trumas chametz, which has no monetary value for the kohen, so really the kohen is really not losing out. But there's an Indian we learned yesterday of kapara, in other words, right? From the pasuk. So therefore you still have to pay the fimida, the peiros. In other words, you have to pay mishalem peiros, whatever you ate, to get the kapara. So for the Gemara now, yiboilu ki mishalem lefimida mishalem. When you pay, when you eat the truma, do you pay for volume? In other words, if you ate a bushel of truma, you have to pay back a bushel. Or lefidamim mishalem. If you ate $100 value, you have to pay back $100 value. And the Gemara explains now. If it was worth in the beginning when he ate it, it was worth 4 zuz and the ulbisayf. Now that he wants to pay back, the value went down. Ulbisayf shav yezuzay loy tebayalach. That's no shaila. The vade can be kar mishalei. You have to pay. You caused basically for the kohen to lose the 4. Can be kar mishalei. You have to pay lefi adamim. Why? You're not worse. You don't get a benefit from a gazlan, because by a gazlan, if somebody steals something that was worth 4, and then it was only worth 1, you have to pay what you stole from the guy 4. The Tanan, we learned on Mishnah, Kala gazlanim mishalmim kshas exela. You stole 4, even though now it's only worth 1, you still got to pay back 4. So here too, even though the chaimesh really is a kapara, right? But still, you got to pay back the kohen. You took away 4 from the kohen, you have to pay back 4 to the kohen. But kita bayilach, what is the whole shaila? The mikara shavi yizuzay. When you took it from the kohen, it was only worth a zuz. Ulipsayv shavi arba. So my lefimida mishalem. Do you pay value, and therefore damalei gurya achal gurya mishalem? In other words, you have to pay back a bushel. So now that the guy gets it back, even though it was only worth 1, he's getting back something worth 4. Great for the kohen. That is lefimida. Idilma no lefidamim mishalem bezuzya achal. I ate from the kohen azuz, so I only paying back bezuzya mishalem. So the shaila is lefimida mishalem, lefidamim mishalem. So Amar Rabbi Yosef, I'll bring a proof. Tashima. Achal Greiger is if somebody ate from truma, he ate dried figs, and vishilalem tomorrow, and he paid back the kohen with dates. Now dates are worth more, right? So Tovel of bracha, he gets a blessing because he ate figs, and he gave him back something really good. He gave him back dates. So the Gemara says, 1 second. If you're paying back the exact amount, I ate a bushel of figs, I give him back a bushel of dates, which is worth more money, that's Tavo Lebracha. So then, Amtulahachi Tavo Lebracha. The Achel Gurya the Greigris, the Shav Yezuzeh, that was only worth a zuz, and Vikayav Gurya the Tumarim, he's giving back a bushel of dates, the Shav Yarba, so Tavo Lebracha, he's giving a Kayan Parnasa, right? If you only have to pay back when you ate a greigris bezuzei achal, when you ate, let's say, a bushel of figs, which is worth a zuz, let's say, and you paid back with dates, but you don't give back a full bushel. You're giving back what it's worth. You give back a half a bushel. So why a bracha? You didn't give him more than he lost. So that's a raya that what? Lefi midah mishalem. Because it says talav bracha. No. He's giving him back dates, but he only gives back a half a bushel and their exact value. But v'amai talav bracha. Why is he getting a blessing? In other words, the achal midi the lekafetz leizvine. He ate something from the kohen that the kohen, if he needs a buyer, could never find a buyer for figs. Nobody wants it, dried out figs. In other words, but the mikamishala midi the kafetz leizvine. He's paying him back a commodity, dates, that if the kohen has to sell, it's easy to find a buyer. So that's why talav bracha, even though he's really giving him back the zuz, exactly what he ate, but he's giving him back something that's easier for him to sell. So that's why Tol Bracha. So really, there's no raya. So tonight we learned in our Mishnah that we learned yesterday. If somebody eats truma from a kohen of chametz on Pesach, even though the truma is worthless to the kohen, right? Because it's chametz and it's Pesach, still, we learned in our Mishnah, he has to pay back the keren, he has to pay back the chaimesh. And we explained again that it's like a kapara he gets because he ate the truma. So, if normally you pay back lefi midah, then I understand that you have to pay back because you ate a bushel, you have to give back a bushel. Shapir. Eli amrit lefi damim mishalem. If you only have to pay back the worth, why are you paying the principal? Chametz bepesach bar damim. Chametz is worthless. So if you have to pay back lefi damim, why are you paying him back? So it's a right that lefi midah. The Gemara says no. No. Chametz on Pesach does has value, even though you're not allowed to eat it. But it's according to Muhammadi, Rabbi Yosef Glili, the Amar Chametz bepesach is mutabana. So it does have value. You could give it to your dog. You could put it under your pot and use it else to make eitzim. Yes. So it has value. Therefore, you have to pay back.
Not only this, after Pesach, it could be worth the full amount. Chametz after Pesach.
Not if it's on.
But
at the time.
At the time, it's not worth anything. Fredi Gemara now, Iachi, Ema Seifa. If that's how you explain it, that it's according to Rabbi Yosef Glili. In other words, that's why you're paying b'shoigek, you pay the keren v'chaimesh. But look at the Seifa. It says, b'mezid, the last line in the Mishnah says, if you ate that truma of the kohen b'mezid, you potter minat tashlumim, umidmei eitzim. But for the Gemara, why you potter? Rabbi Yosef Glili, I might potter minat tashlumim d'mei eitzim. If it's worth something, right? Because according to Rabbi Yosef was saying it's mutar b'ana on Pesach, so even b'mezid you have to pay, right? Now, if you look at Rashi, Ema Seifa, Iyam b'shloim rabbanon, v'taimid the reisha mishum lefi mida mishalem. So the Seifa, the Eina el kishar gazlan, the Seifa we did it b'mezid, and therefore you just like a gazlan. The mishalem mos lefi damim, potem min tashlumim. In other words, the chametz b'pesach lav bar daminu. But according to Rabbi Yossi, that the reisha is lefi damim, so the Seifa also is lefi damim. Why you potter? And for the Gemara, because we have another concept of savalek Rav Nechunya ben Akana, we have a concept of kam leivin Ravnei. If you do something and you cause a person to lose money, at the same time in that act, you are mechayiv yourself misa, right? So since you're already getting killed, kam leivin Ravnei, you get the harsher punishment, which is misa that God takes, and you don't have to pay. So also, Rabbi Yosef ben Akana says, the Tanya Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana Oisa as Yom HaKippurim kishabbos l'tashlumim. Just like on Shabbos, if you machal Shabbos and you cause somebody damage, you just get the death. In other words, whatever you get, the skila herek, whatever you get, and you don't have to pay. Also in Yom Kippur, which is only a chiv kares, also that same kamle rabbanei applies. So here too, by chametz, in other words, by chametz, even though the chametz, Rashi explained that the chametz was not b'mezid. When the Mishnah says he did it b'mezid, because if you do chametz b'mezid, if you eat chametz b'mezid, you get kares too, right? So it's the same level. But here, the mezid was on the truma part. On the chametz, you didn't know you were a shogeg, so you don't get that death penalty, right? But you get misa midei shemayim because of the truma. So since you get that harsh penalty because of truma, therefore you don't have to pay. And that's why the Mishnah says, if you're b'mezid, you're potter, because al t'kam le'midrabim minei. So that's what Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana says. He says Yom Kippurim kishabbos to tashlumim. So just like Yom Kippur, you get the concept of kam le'midrabim minei like Shabbos. So too by truma, the concept of kam le'midrabim minei kicks in. And since for the truma you get misa b'dei shemayim, also you don't have to pay the kohen back. Okay. Now the Gemara says Kitanoi. This concept of lefi midah mishalim and lefi damim mishalim, if you pay the volume, a bushel, or you have to pay the value, is a machlokes tanam. We see it in a Mishnah. Where do you have that? We have it. It says Aichel trumes chametz bepesach. If somebody eats from a kohen truma Trumas Chametz b'Pesach. So today is Danny has Yortzeit for his mother. So we're learning Lezecha Nishmas Chana Pesha Bas Rabbi Yaakov Meir Halevi. Right, Zechrono lebracha. She should have Aliyah's Neshama.
Zechus, May.
Okay, so we're in the middle of Lamed Beis Lamed Aleph. Kitanoi Amachleikis Tanoim. Ha'Eichel. So Meir, you have Yortzeit for your father. What's his name?
Avraham ben.
So we're learning also for Avram
ben Chaim Lev.
Ben Chaim Lev. Okay. Ha'Eichel Trumas Chametz b'Pesach Potim Mitatchlumim. So in other words, here it's just a general statement. So it's mashma. Even Rashi says, look at fifth line in Rashi, bein b'shoygeg in the wide lines. Bein b'shoygeg bein mimezik. It says here that you're potter. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, it says mechayiv, you are chayiv. So Amalei Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, how could you say chayiv? Why are you chayiv? V'chimi ano yeshloi. In other words, did you cause any damage to the kohen? It's asabana. So why should you pay? How about Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, Rabbi Kiva? Umahana. How about the whole concept? If somebody eats truma tameya, so in other words, if truma is tamei, a kohen is not allowed to eat it. So if I eat it, what kind of damage did I do to the kohen? And still, umahana yesh leiloichel truma b'shari kol yimais hashana. It's not Pesach during the year. And we know that you have to pay the kohen mishalem because there's an inyan of if you take truma from a kohen, even though the truma was not allowed to eat it because it was truma tameya, still you have to pay back. So just like there you have to pay back, and the kohen is not allowed to eat it. So here too by chametz, even though the kohen cannot eat it, you ate it. You have to pay the kohen back on chametz. So he says, 1 second. How could you compare both cases? If you eat truma of a kohen, which is tamei, in the rest of the year, that's not Pesach. The kohen is not allowed to eat the truma tameya, but still he has value. He has yeshle b'heter asaka. He could use it and put it under his pot. So he does have a value, so you have to pay that back. But toimim v'zeh chametz she'ein ba loy heter achila v'loy heter asaka. Chametz b'Pesach. Not only you're not allowed to eat, you can't even burn it. You can't have anah. So therefore, how could you compare it? Rabbi Kiva says, how could you, Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, say if you eat a kohen's truma which is chametz chayiv, there's no value? And Rabbi Kiva proves it. This is similar to trumas tutim v'anavim. In other words, you have truma of fruit, which you made into juice. So if it's truma and a person came along, a Yisrael Azar came along and ate the kohen's and drank his juice, that was truma, and it's tamei, she'ein bo lo heter achila, the kohen can, since it was tamei, he couldn't drink the juice. And not only that, lo heter asaka, he can't put it under his fire too. Why can't he put it under his fire? Because it's juice. Try putting it. Right? Now Rashi says, but how about ziluf? Rashi brings in. How about to make it a fragrance, like a good smell? He could have used the kohen, could have used it, right? So Rashi says, we don't allow a kohen to keep something that's tamei, that you're only using for ziluf. Why? Because since you keep it around for a long time, mishum takala, he might come to drink it if he keeps it around, right?
He keeps it around for long enough, he won't drink it.
What's that?
He keeps it around for long enough, he won't drink it.
Okay, but
Can you sell it? Can you sell it?
no.
Yeah, I can sell it.
So then he does have.
Yeah.
So he's got some confidence.
So how do you understand it?
The chometz you can.
I don't think you could sell truma tameya to a guy.
No.
I'm not sure.
Maybe once they had kodesh, you can.
Right, like we learned before something about giving it to the dogs. Right, you couldn't give something kodesh to. You can't give kodesh to the dogs, to klavim. And then we said that a guy has a din like a kelev l'gabi kodesh. We learned that before on the same level. Okay. So he said that's Rabbi Kiva telling Rabbi Yaakov Nuri, that's what it's similar to. That there's no value. And we know that you're potter from paying. You don't have to pay. So therefore on chametz too, you don't have to pay. And the Gemara just ends off and says, B'medvar mamurim, actually before we go on, so here you're going to have a machlokes tanaim. Because according to Rabbi Kiva, that says that you're potter, because he holds lefi damim mishalim. Therefore you're potter. But Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri holds lefi midam mishalim. You took a bushel, In other words, even though it's worthless, you have to give it back to the kohen, right? So that is the machlokes Tanah. And this Mishnah ends off, or the Brisa ends off, and says, "B'medvar mamurim." This only applies that trumas. In other words, how could you have truma of chametz on Pesach? You're supposed to get rid of it. So it's talking in a case b'mafresh truma v'chmitza, where you had something that was not chametz yet. You took truma off, and then it became chametz during Pesach, right? Aval mafresh trumas chametz divrei hakol ein kedusha. But if you had a shtick chametz and you took truma off that on Pesach, that doesn't even have a shem truma anymore, right? Because it's Pesach. That's just the end of the. But we see a machlokes Tanah. Okay, now Tanya Yidach, another brisa. It says v'nasan l'koyin zakodesh. You're supposed to pay back to the kohen something davar haroy as kodesh, something that's fit to be kodesh. What does that exclude? Prat lo eichel truma es chametz b'Pesach. If you eat from a kohen truma which is chametz, which has that's not royally as kodesh, she'patem min hatashlumim mit demei eitzim. That is divrei Rab Lezer ben Yaakov. Rab Lezer Chasma, but Rab Lezer Chasma says mechayiv. So here's the conversation. Amalei Rav Chasma Rab Lezer ben Yaakov. You say v'chima no yesh loi. In other words, the reason why I say chayiv, because normally, if somebody eats truma tameya b'shari ma'asashana of a kohen, which does not have any value, and still we say that you have to pay the kohen, right? This is like in the Havamina, without this. We're not talking about the value of burning it underneath as a na, that eating. You cannot eat. A kohen can't eat it. So if you take it away from the kohen, you still have to pay, even though he doesn't have any worth in it. So therefore here too. So he has a value. But chametz she'ein bo lo heter achila v'lo heter asaka. Amar lo af bezu. So he answered him, no. Even on chametz yesh lo bo heter asaka. Why? Shimratza kohen maritza lefnei kalboy o masika tachas tafshilo. The kohen does have a na, right?
He can't give it to his dog. No, because it's not.
So he could. So he has a value. Right? So since he has a value, so this would go according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, right? That allows to have a na on Pesach. Okay, so the Gemara says in Amud Beis, Amar Abaya, so Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, now we had Rabbi Kiva, that they both said that you're putter, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Kula Svirle Chametz bePesach Osbana. They all hold, even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that you're chayiv to pay, but still it's asabana. Uvahapligi, because Rabbi Kiva savar lefi damim mishalem. So since it's asabana and has no value, and you pay lefi damim, therefore you're pater if you eat the kohen's truma on Pesach. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri savar lefi mida mishalem, and therefore even though it's asabana on Pesach, but if you took a bushel from the kohen, you have to pay him back a bushel. So Gemara says pshita. That's obvious. Why else? If Rabbi Yochanan Nuri holds asabana, why else would you have to pay? It has to be lefi mida mishalem. What's the chiddush here? So no, maybe Rabbi Yochanan Nuri nami Rabbi Kiva severely. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan Nuri holds Rabbi Kiva that lefi damim mishalem. So lefi damim mishalem. So why yechayiv? Ahasam haynetain mechayiv, because he holds mishum desav like Rabbi Saglili maybe dam chametz b'Pesach mutabana. Therefore kamashlan. That's why BAYT comes along and says that even Rabbi Yochanan Nuri holds asabana. So the only reason why he would say Chai Rabbi Yochanan Nuri if you eat Trumas Chametz from a kohen on Pesach is only because of Lefi Mida Bishalem. It has to be Lefi Mida. Why don't you say maybe Rabbi Yochanan Nuri holds Lefi Damim, and the reason why you're Chayiv is because it's Mutabana, like Rabbi Saglili? No, but that wouldn't make sense, because Imkei Nahatle Rabbi Yochanan Nuri Rabbi Kiva Ki Heichad Mahadle Rabbi Lezer ben Chasma Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. In the second brisa, Rabbi Lezer ben Chasma answered Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov that you could give it to your dog. So you see from Rabbi Eliezer Chasma that he holds like Rabbi Yisrael Glili. But if Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri holds like Rabbi Yisrael Glili, why didn't he answer that to Rabbi Kiva when they had a conversation that it does have a kohen has a on chametz because he can give it to his dog? Since he didn't make that statement, he didn't answer him. Must be he does not hold like Rabbi Yisrael Glili, right? And therefore he holds it's asibana. So the only reason why Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri holds you're chayiv to pay back the kohen chametz on Pesach is because the fimida mishalem. You stole a bushel, you have to pay back a bushel.
Doesn't matter if he
right. No questions asked. Tana Rabbana. Ha'oichel kizayis tzchuma. If somebody eats now a share of kizayis, a small share, a kizayis only, still he has to pay back mishalem keren v'chaymish. You know the shiurim is kizayis. The next year could be kibeya, right? So even if he eats a kizayis, still you have to pay back to the kohen, and you have to pay back keren v'chaymish. Abishal comes along and says, no, achiyibe shava pruta. It has to be a shava pruta. Now we'll see in the Gemara. My time. So normally, if it's a shava pruta, for sure it's going to be larger than a kazayas. My time at the Tanakama. Why does the Tanakama say that even if you eat a kazayas, you're chayiv? Because amakra v'ish kiyoichel kodesh b'shgaga. If you eat kodesh b'shgaga, you have to pay back a keren v'chomesh. And v'achila we know is b'kazayas. When it says we bench v'achalta b'savata, if you eat a kazayas, you that's called achila. So if a kizayis is achila, so it says by the concept of keren v'chomesh, it says ki achel, achila is kizayis, therefore you chayiv even on a kizayis. Abishal my timer because amakra v'nasan you have to give ve'enasina pachos mishava pruta. When you are mekadosh, Rob is coming up to a wedding. When you're giving a ring, something under the chuppah to your kala, you have to give a shava pruta. Because it has to be something on a sina. You have to give her something to be mekudeshes. So the sina has to be a shava pruta. So since here in the parsha of Truma it says keren v'chomesh, it has to be v'nasan. You have to take away something. So when you pay him back, it has to be a shava pruta. So what does Abishal do? But it says achila, which means a kazayis. Ahu prat lemazik hudasa. That is a case where when you take truma from a kohen, you don't eat it. You know what you do? You don't like that kohen. He's always a big shot in shul. So you grab this truma and you flush it down the toilet. So you didn't eat it, but you caused damage to him. So there, when you cause damage, not through achila, has to be at least a shava pruta. If it would be only a kazayas, you would be pater. Right? So if you take something from a kohen and you throw it away, make sure it's a kazayas, not a shava pruta, to be pater. V'tanakama, ayoksiv nasan. Why is a kazayas enough? Ahu mebayle. Again, that pasuk is l'davar royally is kodesh, which it used to tell you that you have to pay back prat loichel trumas chametz b'pesach. That since you took away chametz from a kohen, so if you pay him back chametz, it's not royally is kodesh. So therefore, you pater on chametz of truma. Tana Rabbana now. We have a brayse that says trumas pachos mikazayis. If somebody eats from a kohen truma now less than a kazayis, you only have to pay mishalem as a keren, and mishalem as a chaymis. For the Gemara nahechi dami. Eat the less by shava pruta. If there's less than a kazayis is less than a shava pruta, and keren namelo lishalim. So why do you have to even pay the principal? You should be pater on that because it's worthless. Ella v'ida ispe shava pruta. If there's less than kazayis is worth a shava pruta, Chaim is namish l'shalim. So why only the keren, even the chomesh? Now how is it possible that if it's less than a kazayis, it's worth a shava pruta? So Rashi says, v'leka kazayis. If you look at the fifth narrow line, kigayin shenas b'tzayris. It's a famine year. It's hunger. In other words, so therefore, even less than a kazayis is going to be worth a shava pruta, right? So then the kashi is even chaimish. So la'olam this be shava pruta. Really, it's worth a shava pruta. Ba'afila hachi. So why don't you have to pay the chaimish? Ba'afila hachi. Keep the less by kazayis, since it does not have a gezayis, and in the parsha of Chaimesh it says ve'achal, you need a shir achila. Therefore, mishalom is a keren. You only pay al hezik, but the mishalom is a Chaimesh. You don't pay this Chaimesh because in the parsha of Chaimesh it says ve'achal. It has to be a shir achila. Right. And that's what the Brisa says. Aichel truma pachas b'kezayis. Amru rabbanon kamed Rav Papa. So they said, hard like Abishal. This Brisa that we just learned now is not like Abishal. Because we were learning here, Shava Pruta, you would say, oh, must be Abishal. No, the Rabbanan say, this is not like Abishal. Why? Because the Abishal, ha'amar kivin sheyesh by Shava Pruta, afagav the less by Kazayis. In other words, Abishal says that you be chayiv chomish even doesn't have a Kazayis, according to Abishal. So the Gemara says, Malahu, Rapapa, no, Afilu Teim Abishal. Because Abishal, when he says At is Be Shava Pruta, it means Tarti Boy. He needs them both. You need a Shava Pruta and a minimum Kazayas. You need them both. So that's why this Brisa here that we learned could even be according to Abishal. But the Gemara says now, me boy Abishal Tarte. You're saying that Abishal needs both? That when it's a Shava Pruta, it also has to be a Kezayis? But now we learned the Mishnah. Abishal, as she yesh boy, he makes this statement. As she yesh boy Shava Pruta, chayiv b'tashlumim. As she ain't boy Shava Pruta, ain't a chayiv b'tashlumim. And Amr Loi, the Rabbanan answered Abishal, and they said, Loi, Amru, Shavapruta, the whole din of Shavapruta is Ela Inyan, Mila Bulvad. That only applies to Hegdish, not Truma. If you nana from Hegdish, from Kaidesh, then you need a Shavapruta. Aval the Truma, the Rabbanan says, Ein a Chayiv, Achehei Bei Kezayis. But Vim Isa, if we just established that even according to Abishal, not only do you need a Shava Pruta, you also need a Kezayis. So the whole language here is wrong. Vim Isa, the Rabbanan should say, Kivin sheyesh boy Kezayis b'boyalei. That's the way they should have answered Abishal. Since the Rabbanan came along and said a different language, must be they learned Abishal, that Abishal holds that you only need a Shava Pruta. Even if it's a less than a Kezayis, if it's a Shava Pruta, you'll be Chayiv Chomesh. So to Yufta, you cannot say that it's according to Abishal. This price is not Abishal. And the Gemara says, V'afra Papa, even Rav Papa that wanted to say that Abishal needs both. And this is a long brisa, and we're going to finish the brisa today. Right? So even we'll bring a proof that even Rav Papa had charata what he said. He said that Abishal needs Shava Pruta and Kezayis. So Rav Papa retracted and said no, that Abishal only needs a Shava Pruta. And this is a raya from the brisa. And we're going to end off after we learn this complete brisa. The Tanya, we learned the brisa. V'chata b'shkaga. You did a sin bishkaga. This is talking about not truma. This is talking about kaidesh, that a person was mayel b'kaidesh. So if you did it b'shaygeg, you pay back the chaimesh and you bring a carbon. Prat lemezit. But if a person takes kaidesh b'mezit, there's no din of carbon. Bali dinu, Mara says. But I can make a kal v'chomer. In other words, I don't need a pasuk. Without the pasuk, I would say automatically that a mezid b'kodesh is patam not carbon. Why? Ma'ashar mitzvahs. Other mitzvahs in the Torah. In other words, shechai ben karis. We know there's a mitzvah not to eat. It's not a mitzvah, but anyway, it's an avera to eat chaylev or dam. You're not allowed to eat chaylev, fat, or dam. If you do eat it, you'll be chayiv karis. We know paita behem es hamezid. If somebody ate chaylev and b'mezid, there's no carbon for that, right? Mila, so therefore that is like chaylev. So mila she'ain by karis, that's not as strict as chaylev and dam because it doesn't have the chi of karis on it. Ain't a din shepatas hamezid. So for sure, if you did it b'mezid, there shouldn't be a carbon. Or it says no. La yimamrit b'shar mitzvahs there is shekain lechayi by misa. In other words, when you legabi davera of chaylev and dam, there's no chi of misa b'dei shemayim. There's only karis now according to the Gemara. So that's why maybe you are part of a carbon that you do b'mezid. B'tayim b'mila. But if you're moyel b'hegdish, where it's so chumradik shechayi by misa, there's a chi of b'dei shemayim. I might think that even if you did it b'mezid, there should be a chi of carbon. Talmud Laima, that's why you need a bishkaga prat lemezid. This is the brisa. And for Amrle, the brisa Amrle of Menachem bar Yitzchak or Rivke bar Avin, Haitana mikara. Alimale karis. In other words, this Tana in the beginning held that karis is alima, is stronger. Ula b'saif at the end of the brisa, alimale misa b'dei shemayim is more chumradik than karis.
At the end.
Now, what is the difference between karis? Karis means you die. God kills you. We don't kill him we don't hang him, right? It's all of a sudden you go to sleep, all of a sudden you don't wake up. God killed you. Karis is also. It's not karis you get cut up. Karis everybody thinks it's like you're getting cut up. No, God kills you.
No, but
so what's the difference between karis?
Children. So it's more chumradik, I think, than Misa b'dei shemayim, no?
Right. So that's the Gemara's havim in it. And the Gemara's maskana is, we'll see in the Gemara, that what? The Misa b'dei shemayim is more chumradik. So karis is a certain age. In other words, karis kicks in when you hit 50. You better watch it.
60.
Till 60. No. I think karis is from 50 to 60. And Misa b'dei shemayim, you have a few more years, right? You can wait till 60 to start worrying that God might get you, right? So if you're worrying, make sure you don't do these affairs. That's the easy way out.
Karis,
right?
children die also.
And that's another thing, right? Very good. In other words, when you're going to die, you're not going to have any kids alive. Right? You'll be childless. Misa b'dei shemayim, you're going to die on your own. So what's mashma? That what's more chumradik? Karis is more chumradik. But here, the brisa, right away at this point, held at the end. Havim was karis, which makes sense. That'll b'saif alim alei misa. But v'amalei hachi kamar loy im amrid b'shar mitzvahs shekein loy chay ben misa b'pachim b'gezayis. So he kicks in this concept of pachim b'gezayis now. No, by chelev and dam, if you eat that which is pachas b'gezayis, then there's no misa b'dei shemayim even. But taimah b'mila shechay b'misa pachas b'gezayis. But if you moil behegdish, even pachas b'gezayis. V'amalei tanuach daitach. Oh, you should have a good. Your mind should be nice. Why? Because you made me feel good. You feel good because with you saying this, you make me feel good. But he says, what do you with this whole thing? The Rabbi Rav Shesha Shadabe Narga, they came along and asked the kasha. Was man shamat lay? They asked, who had held this concept? Amar, he's a demila b'misa. Who holds this whole concept that there's a misa b'dei shemayim by moyel behegdish? That is Rebbe. Rebbe holds this concept. At Tanya, we learned a brisa. He's a demila, right? B'misa, and Chaim Bazara. You don't get misa. You only get malchus, a lav. My time with the Rebbe, because Amar Bavua, Gomar Chet Chet Metruma. We learn out of Xereshava of Chet Chet Metruma. Ma Truma would be Misa, you get Misa B'dei Shemayim. Av Mila is B'misa. So the whole concept of Misa B'dei Shemayim, you learn out of Truma. But Umina, once you're learning it out from there, learn out also the din that Ma Truma B'kezayis, Av Mila B'kezayis. So there has to be a kezayis. So this brisa that says, in other words, pachas mekazayis, you won't be chayiv. So maskal. Oh, and this is continuing on. Maskal or papa, but my the Rebbe, Krabanan Svirle. How do you know that Rebbe by Truma holds like the Rabbanim of Abishal that you need a kezayis? The Abishal Svirle. The Amma maybe he holds the Yesh by Shava Pruta va'afagav the less by kezayis. Right? This is Rav Papa. So Rav Papa is asking the question, saying that maybe Rebbe holds like Abishal. But if Rav Papa made the statement that Abishal, when he says Shava Pruta, has to be a kezayis, what's he talking about here? That Abishal doesn't hold a kezayis. So therefore, I have Rav Papa who damak Abishal tarte boy. So what's this whole conversation here? Elishmamina must be Hader Bey. Must be Rav Papa also had Charata. And we'll end off here.